Welcome back. Tonight, we drift through the sleepy streets of ancient Athens. So wherever you are, however your day has been, you have nothing to do now but rest. There are no twists tonight, nothing to follow, nothing you need to remember in the morning. A city of white marble and olive wood growing still beneath a deep violet dusk. We'll drift slowly, in no hurry to be anywhere at all. If these journeys help you rest, you're welcome to follow along, but only if you'd like to. And if you're listening now, leave the name of your city and the time where you are. Wherever you're listening from, you're in good company tonight. So let yourself settle. Let your shoulders soften. And let your eyes close whenever they're ready. Breathe in slowly. And let it go. There's no need to stay awake for any of this. Just let the streets of ancient Athens come to you. The reason this ancient city sits exactly where it does is a massive limestone rock. It rises sharply from the flat plain below. Long before anyone carved marble columns, the Acropolis was just a natural fortress. It gave early settlers a high, safe place to live. From up here, they had clear views all the way to the sea. You can imagine those first people climbing the steep slopes. They sought shelter above the wild valleys. The sheer cliffs offered a perfect defense against outside threats. No walls were needed in those early days. The stone itself kept them safe. Over time, this rough plateau became the center of their world. It anchored the scattered farms into a single community. The wind still sweeps across the flat top just as it did then. The light still hits the pale stone at dawn. This single rock gave the people a reason to stay. The early town survived only because of a hidden quirk in the earth. Deep cracks in the limestone rock held secret pools of water. The land around them had no rivers that flowed all year. During the dry summer months, the plains turned to dust. But the first residents found deep, steady springs hidden in the rock. They gathered tightly around these precious water sources. This anchored the growing town to the base of the great hill. You can still find the old stone basins carved into the shadows. The water pools quietly in the dark, cool and clear. It drips from the ceiling, just as it did thousands of years ago. Without these hidden reserves, no one could have lived here for long. The dry climate would have forced them to keep moving. Instead, the steady drip of water let a permanent home take root. The springs gave life to the dry earth. The town owes its name to a mythical gamble over farming. According to old stories, two gods offered gifts to win the people over. Poseidon struck the ground and offered a saltwater spring. Athena chose to plant the very first tame olive tree. The citizens looked at the dry soil and chose the olive. That single choice tied their early trade forever to olive oil. The tree gave them food, fuel for lamps, and soap for bathing. It was a perfect crop for the harsh, sun-baked land. You can still see twisted olive trees growing in sacred spaces today. Their silver leaves shimmer in the bright midday heat. The roots dig deep into the rocky soil. They find moisture where nothing else can. This simple plant shaped the whole identity of the region. It turned a small farming village into a wealthy trading hub. The humble olive became the true gold of the ancient world. Power truly began to grow through a massive shift. The nearby land was once just a scattered group of free farming villages. Each small town had its own leaders and its own rules. Then, they made a rare and peaceful choice to join together. This event was known as the Synoecism. The villages agreed to merge their rules into a single capital. They instantly built a sprawling, unified city-state. The dusty roads from the hills now all led to one central hub. Farmers and traders began to see themselves as part of a larger whole. You can imagine the slow movement of ideas and goods along those dirt paths. The shared identity made them stronger than they had ever been apart. They were no longer just lonely farmers scraping by in the valleys. They were now citizens of a rising power. This unity laid the groundwork for everything that would follow. The growing society avoided a lasting dictatorship because of a single lawmaker. His name was Solon. He saw that extreme debt was tearing the people apart. Poor farmers were losing their land. They were being forced into slavery by the people they owed. In a bold move, Solon simply cancelled all the debts at once. He freed the citizens who had been bound to the wealthy landowners. He physically removed the stone markers that claimed the poor farmers' fields. This brave choice completely rewrote the social fabric of the town. It gave the poorest workers a fresh start and a stake in their home. You can picture the relief in the dusty open market that day. The heavy burden of impossible loans was lifted in an instant. This sweeping change planted the very first seeds of future democracy. It proved that laws could be changed to protect the weak. The people learned they had a voice. The first grandstone buildings were actually built by a tyrant. A ruler named Pisistratos wanted to win the favor of the common people. He knew that grand public works would make his rule popular. So he paid for a massive new water network to bring fresh water to everyone. Laborers dug deep trenches in the dry earth. They laid interlocking clay pipes in the dirt. He also ordered the building of the first large stone temples. These projects changed the rustic town into a true urban center. The sound of chisels and hammers echoed through the streets from dawn to dusk. people saw their home changing from mud brick to lasting stone. The tyrant gave them steady water and beautiful public spaces. Even though he ruled by force, his building projects improved daily life. The physical shape of the city grew grander under his control. His ambition left a lasting mark on the dusty streets. The whole path of the region changed overnight. Deep underground, miners struck a massive, very pure vein of silver at a place called Lorien. This sudden find brought a huge wave of wealth into the public treasury. Men crawled through narrow, dark shafts carved into solid rock. They worked by the warm, flickering glow of small oil lamps. The glittering ore they pulled from the earth was melted into shining coins. This new money gave the local leaders incredible financial power. They could suddenly afford to dream much bigger than before. The silver flowed from the dark mines directly into the sunlit markets. It paid for imported goods, grand buildings and bold plans. You can almost hear the clinking of fresh coins changing hands. The earth itself had handed them the key to an empire. This lucky strike in the rocky hills changed the course of their history forever. Instead of handing out the new silver to the citizens, one politician proposed a gamble. A leader named Themistocles convinced the people to spend every single coin on defense. He urged them to build a massive fleet of 200 modern warships. The voters stood in the open air and agreed to the risky plan. That single vote turned them into the undisputed naval superpower of the sea. Down at the water's edge, the shipyards suddenly buzzed with frantic energy. Workers bent massive wooden ribs and shaped thick planks at dawn. The smell of fresh pine and hot pitch filled the salty air. Thousands of men found new work as rowers and shipbuilders. They traded their sudden wealth for a wall of wooden ships. It was a choice that looked outward to the horizon. The silver from the dark earth was turned into a floating fortress on the bright blue water. The classical skyline we know today only exists because the older version was erased. In a crushing blow, an invading Persian army broke through the defenses. They burned the entire settlement to the ground. Every early temple, shrine and mud brick home was reduced to ash. The citizens had fled just in time. They watched the smoke rise from nearby islands. When they returned, they found their sacred hilltop shattered and blackened. Broken stone columns lay scattered among the debris. The destruction was total. It left nothing but scorched earth and quiet ruins. Yet, this terrible loss provided a massive blank slate. The old, cramped layout was gone forever. The fire cleared the way for the grand buildings that would soon follow. Sometimes a city must be completely broken before it can be reimagined. The ashes of the old temples became the base for a much grander vision. the worst disaster created their greatest chance. For over 30 years, the returning citizens left their ruined temples untouched on purpose. They swore a solemn pledge, known as the Oath of Plataea. They vowed to leave the blackened stones exactly as the invaders had left them. The ruins served as a lasting, visible memorial to their darkest moment. Grass grew tall around the scorched marble blocks. Wild flowers bloomed among the shattered altars in the spring. You can imagine walking past those quiet, broken columns every day. The sight was a constant reminder of what they had lost and survived. They chose memory over quick rebuilding. The damaged stones sat weathering in the bright, clear daylight. It was a landscape of chosen grief and quiet defiance. They wanted every child to see the cost of war. The empty, ruined plateau spoke louder than any new building could. They lived in the shadow of their own ghosts for a whole generation. To support their massive new navy, the leaders made a bold geographic shift. They completely abandoned their old, shallow coastal harbor. Instead, they moved their whole sea trade to the deep-water basins of Piraeus. This choice turned a quiet, rocky peninsula into the busiest trading port in the world. Massive stone shipsheds were built along the deep blue water. Wooden warships were pulled up out of the sea to dry in the sun. Merchant ships from distant lands began to crowd the docks. The smell of salt, spices and tar hung heavy in the warm air. The new port became a loud, vibrant world of its own. It was filled with foreign traders, sailors, and dock workers. The city had officially tied its survival to the sea. They left the shallow beaches behind for deep, safe anchorages. This move secured their lifeline to the rest of the known world. While the inland capital remained a messy maze of winding alleys, the port was different. The new harbor town was designed from scratch by a planner named Hippodamus. He ignored the natural curves of the land and used a strict, flat grid. It was one of the very first times a city was planned this way. Perfectly straight, wide dirt avenues crossed each other at exact right angles. Uniform stone houses lined the neat, orderly streets. You could stand at one end of a road and see the water. The afternoon sunlight cast long, straight shadows down the blocks. It felt entirely modern compared to the old, tangled paths of the upper town. This grid made moving heavy cargo and troops very fast. It brought a sense of calm logic to the busy waterfront. The messy reality of daily trade was contained within perfect lines. The port was a true triumph of order. To protect their vital link to the sea, engineers built an amazing defensive corridor. They built the long walls, stretching 4 miles across the flat, dusty plain. These two massive, parallel stone barriers connected the inland center directly to the port. A safe dirt road ran quietly between them. This engineering marvel turned the capital into an island on land. Even if an enemy army surrounded them, they could still safely reach their ships. Food and supplies could flow freely from the harbor to the markets. You can picture merchants walking safely between the high stone walls at sunset. The golden light would catch the dust kicked up by the carts. The walls made them completely safe from traditional sieges. They no longer feared being starved out by land forces. As long as they controlled the sea, the walls kept the heart of the empire beating. The iconic marble skyline we recognize today was born from a bold political choice. A leader named Pericles finally decided it was time to clear the ruins. He started a massive public works program to rebuild the sacred hilltop. His goal was to project absolute imperial power to the rest of the world. The project also provided paid daily labor for thousands of ordinary citizens. Wooden scaffolding soon surrounded the rising columns of the Parthenon. Pulleys groaned under the weight of pristine white marble blocks. The air was thick with white dust, and the sound of heavy mallets. Stonemasons carefully carved perfect grooves into the massive pillars. The bright daylight made the fresh stone gleam against the blue sky. It was a stunning display of wealth and artistic skill. The new temples were designed to be seen from miles away. They stood as a proud, gleaming crown above the dusty streets. The grand building project was secretly funded by a massive breach of trust. The leaders moved the shared wealth of their military group from a neutral island. They brought the heavy chests of silver directly into their own temples. The town simply stole Allied defense funds to build its own grand buildings. In the dim rooms of the new shrines, the wealth was stacked high. Bronze chests overflowed with silver coins in the flickering torchlight. The Allies had paid this money to protect the seas from foreign fleets. Instead, it bought pure white marble and paid local stone carvers. The beautiful skyline was built on stolen money and broken promises. It was a quiet, planned theft, hidden behind stunning art. The gleaming columns hid a dark political truth. The empire was using its friends to make itself beautiful. The grand temples were a monument to both genius and deep greed. When a brutal new war began, the leaders made a desperate choice. The entire rural population of the nearby countryside was ordered to leave their farms. They were told to pack what they could and move inside the defensive walls. The capital suddenly swelled into a dangerously crowded refugee camp. The dusty corridor between the long walls filled with temporary wooden shacks. Families pitched cloth tents and huddled around small, smoky campfires at twilight. The quiet, orderly spaces were suddenly packed with displaced farmers and their livestock. The makeup of the area changed in a matter of days. people who had always lived in open fields were now trapped in narrow alleys. The air grew thick with smoke and the noise of too many people. The safe stone fortress had become a crowded, dirty prison. They had traded the danger of the enemy for the danger of each other. The severe overcrowding quickly led to a terrible disaster. A deadly plague swept through the packed alleys and temporary camps. It killed a huge part of the population in a very short time. Even the great leader Pericles fell victim to the sudden illness. The narrow dirt streets grew eerily quiet, as doors were shut tight. You might see a single abandoned clay water jug lying in the dust. The overcast daylight felt heavy and gloomy over the suffering town. This tragedy suddenly ended the golden age of art and growth. The loss of so many people shifted the political mood toward anger and fear. More angry and reckless leaders stepped into the empty space. The grand empire began to crack from the inside out. The walls had kept the enemy army away, but they trapped the sickness inside. The bright golden era faded into quiet grief. When the long war finally ended in surrender, the punishment was heavy with meaning. The winning Spartans forced the defeated citizens to tear down their beloved long walls. Laborers used heavy iron bars to pry the massive stone blocks apart. They sent the heavy stones crashing down into the dry dust below. The tearing down was carried out to the mocking, cheerful sound of Spartan flute players. The harsh, unforgiving midday sun beat down on the broken defenses. This moment marked the true physical end of their great empire. The safe corridor to the sea was completely destroyed. The town was no longer an unbeatable island on land. It was just another weak town on the dusty plain. The music made the shame even sharper for the people watching. Their greatest building triumph was taken apart piece by piece. The empire fell not with a final battle, but with a song. Just over a decade later, the broken defenses were quietly rebuilt. A clever general named Conon managed to rebuild the crucial stone walls. However, he could only afford the huge project by using foreign money. The funds were given by their old enemy, the Persian Empire. Stonemasons carefully laid the heavy limestone blocks back into place. The distant blue sea once again felt safely connected to the inland streets. The warm sunlight hit the fresh mortar as the barrier rose higher. It was a strange twist of fate for the proud citizens. The very empire that had once burned their temples was now paying for their safety. They swallowed their pride to regain their physical safety. The new walls looked just like the old ones, but the meaning had changed. Their freedom was now propped up by foreign gold. The city was safe again, but it was no longer truly free. As military power faded, the leaders remade their home as a center of culture. a statesman named Lycurgus started a massive new building program. He focused on replacing the old, rotting wooden public buildings with lasting stone. Under his careful direction, the famous Theatre of Dionysus finally received a grand upgrade. Workers installed sweeping, curved rows of pristine white marble seats into the hillside. The bright afternoon daylight made the new stone seating glow against the earth. The space was changed from a simple gathering spot into a grand venue. People could sit comfortably and watch the greatest plays of the age. The focus shifted from building warships to building beautiful public spaces. They wanted to be known for their art and ideas, not just their armies. The Marble Theatre became a symbol of this new, peaceful identity. The drama on stage replaced the drama of war. The fame of the old capital continued to attract wealthy admirers from afar. Hellenistic kings from places like Pergamon and Egypt wanted to connect with its famous history. They eagerly donated massive, rich buildings to reshape the city center. Grand, two-story marble porches with red-tiled roofs were built along the dusty market. These beautiful structures, like the Stoa of Attalos, stood gleaming and pristine in the sun. They provided cool, shaded walkways for philosophers and merchants to gather. The local citizens didn't have to pay for any of this new beauty. The foreign kings simply bought their way into the local history. The town began to feel like a living museum, funded by outside admirers. The architecture grew more fancy and grand, even as local political power faded. The streets were filled with monuments to other people's wealth. The city survived by trading on its glorious past. The long era of freedom ended in violence during a brutal Roman siege. The Roman general Sulla finally broke through the stone walls near the main gates. Heavy wooden doors were broken and smashed under the fierce attack. Roman siege engines and scattered rubble choked the narrow entryways. The smoky dawn light revealed the terrible cost of the battle. This violent breach forever broke the town as a political power. The fierce defense was crushed, and the old ways were swept aside. The surviving citizens had to accept their new place in a much larger empire. They slowly turned into a quiet, respected college town for wealthy Romans. The days of leading groups and fighting wars were over forever. Young Roman nobles came here to study deep thoughts and admire the old statues. The fierce capital of the sea became a peaceful, sleepy campus for the elite. Centuries later, a Roman emperor named Hadrian fell deeply in love with the quiet town. He spent huge amounts of money to build an entirely new, wide neighborhood. This fresh district sat just to the east of the dense, older streets. He even built a towering, fancy marble archway to mark the border. The warm golden hour light still catches the elegant carvings on the stone. The arch carried a bold message dividing the past from the present. One side faced the old alleys, while the other faced his wide paved Roman avenues. He wanted everyone to know that this new area belonged to him. The town was now a blend of ancient Greek history and grand Roman dreams. The emperor treated the place like a beloved pet project. He gave them libraries, temples, and fresh water. The old city was perfectly kept, but it was no longer theirs alone. The wide, comfortable Roman era was broken by a sudden, violent raid. A northern tribe called the Heruli swept through the open streets. They burned the beautiful libraries and smashed the grand stone buildings. The terrified survivors were forced to quickly shrink their living space. They quickly built a much smaller, tighter wall around the main hilltop. This new barrier was a messy mix of saved history. They stacked together broken marble columns, shattered statues, and old gravestones. The gloomy grey daylight showed the desperate panic of their work. They left behind centuries of careful city growth, just to survive. The wide Roman avenues and grand porches were left outside the new borders. The glorious past was truly broken apart to build a crude shield. The town pulled back into a tiny, frightened shell of its former self. The grand open spaces were lost to fear and fire. The final blow to the ancient era was a simple piece of paper. In the year 529, the Byzantine Emperor Justinian made a strict new rule. He ordered the closing of Plato's Academy and all the old pagan schools. Heavy wooden doors were chained shut in the quiet ancient courtyards. Dry leaves blew across the empty mosaic floors in the fading evening twilight. The lively debates that had echoed here for centuries were suddenly silenced. This rule ended a 1,000-year run as the thinking center of the world. The scholars packed their scrolls and quietly left for foreign lands. The grand temples were slowly turned into churches, and the old gods were forgotten. The bright, curious spirit of the town finally went to sleep. The marble columns still stood, but the minds that built them were gone. The ancient world simply closed its heavy doors and faded into history. High above the modern streets, the great rock of the Acropolis holds a quiet secret. The famous temple we see today rests on a hidden past. The current Parthenon sits directly on top of a massive limestone platform. This base was built for an older, unfinished shrine. Long ago, Persian forces burned the city to the ground. When the people returned, they did not clear the ruin away. They simply used the scorched foundations of the old temple. These rough stones became the support for the new one. You can still see the stark contrast in the rock. Pristine white marble steps sit heavy on top of dark burned limestone blocks. The builders left this scar visible on purpose. It serves as a quiet reminder of what was lost. The city grew again from its own ashes. The greatest symbol of their golden age stands firmly on the bones of their darkest day. When you look at the long marble base of the temple, it appears perfectly straight. But this massive structure contains almost no straight lines at all. The ancient architects were masters of human sight. They knew that a perfectly flat platform would look wrong to the eye. From a distance, a long flat line seems to sag in the middle under heavy weight. To fix this optical illusion, they intentionally curved the stone base. The center of the floor rises gently upward like a very shallow bow. This subtle swell tricks your brain into seeing a perfectly level line. It is a brilliant piece of hidden engineering. The builders carved each heavy block to fit this exact, gentle curve. They shaped the hard stone to match the flaws of human vision. The building feels light and perfect because it is secretly bent. The stone breathes with a quiet, hidden life. This same trick of the eye extends up into the towering marble columns. From far away, these tall pillars look incredibly strong and perfectly straight. But they are not straight at all. The stone carvers gave each column a slight outward bulge in the middle. This hidden swelling is a technique called entasis. Without this gentle curve, the tall pillars would appear pinched and weak. They would look like they were buckling under the heavy roof. The subtle bulge gives the stone a sense of muscular tension. It looks like a strong arm flexing to hold up the sky. The builders carved these massive blocks with perfect precision to create this effect. They wanted the temple to look alive and full of energy. The stone seems to push back against the weight of the world. It is a quiet illusion that has lasted for thousands of years. Just steps away stands the monumental gateway to the sacred hill, known as the Propylaea. It is a grand entrance, made of smooth, heavy marble. But if you look closely at the walls, you will notice something strange. The building was never actually finished. Several rough U-shaped nubs of stone still stick out from the polished blocks. These awkward bumps are called lifting bosses. Builders used them to tie ropes around the heavy stones and hoist them into place. The plan was to chisel these nubs off once the walls were done. But a long, bitter war broke out across the land. The city ran out of money and time. The stone carvers put down their tools and never came back. These rough bumps remain on the smooth walls today. They are quiet ghosts of a sudden stop. They freeze a single moment of ancient construction in time forever. Nearby sits a very strange, asymmetrical temple called the Erection. Most ancient shrines are perfectly balanced rectangles, but this one is a complex puzzle. The architects had to build around several pre-existing sacred spots on the rocky hill. They could not simply level the ground and start fresh. Instead, the floor levels shift dramatically to fit the uneven slope. The building steps down the rock to cover a holy olive tree. It bends to protect a mythical snake den hidden in the earth. It even stretches to cover a deep mark in the bedrock. Legends say the sea god Poseidon struck that exact spot with his trident. The builders had to respect every single holy site. The result is a beautiful, uneven structure that looks different from every angle. It is a building shaped entirely by the deep myths of the land. The stone simply wraps around the stories. The most famous feature of this uneven temple is its southern porch. Here, 6 marble statues of maidens stand in place of normal columns. These beautiful figures are known as the caryatids. They gaze calmly out over the city, holding the heavy stone roof on their heads. If you look at their backs, you will see thick, intricately braided hair. These deep carvings are not just a pretty stylistic choice. The heavy stone braids secretly reinforce the weakest part of the marble necks. A thin, smooth neck would easily snap under the crushing weight of the roof above. The thick braids add crucial bulk and strength to the stone. The sculptors hid a vital piece of engineering inside a beautiful detail. The maidens look relaxed and graceful, but they are doing incredibly hard work. Their elegant hair has held the heavy ceiling up for over 2,000 years. Hidden in a shallow cave on the northern slope of the rock is a quiet pool. This is the Clepsydra Spring, a vital source of fresh water. In ancient times it was accessed by a secret, steep flight of stone stairs. These steps were carved directly into the deep shadows of the cliff face. The city leaders knew that enemies might one day capture the lower town. If the people had to retreat to the high rock, they would need water to survive. This hidden spring ensured that the defenders would not die of thirst. The dark, cool cave kept the water fresh and safe from the hot sun. You can still feel the chill in the air as you walk down the narrow steps. The sound of dripping water echoes softly in the dark. It is a hidden lifeline carved deep into the bones of the city. Just a short walk along the same rocky slope lies another, small, dark opening. This is the Cave of Pan, tucked into a shallow overhang. It is a humble spot, dedicated to the wild, goat-legged god of the forest. The city leaders created this shrine after a massive battle on a distant plain. The soldiers believed that Pan had helped them win the fight. They thought the wild god had caused a sudden, terrifying panic among the enemy troops. To say thank you, they turned this simple cave into a sacred place. People left small clay figures, and quiet offerings on the natural rock ledges. It feels very different from the grand marble temples just above it. There are no massive columns or perfect lines here. It is just a quiet, shadowy crack in the earth. It honors the wild, unpredictable forces that live outside the city walls. Further around the slope, a massive outdoor theatre curves into the hillside. This is the Theatre of Dionysus, where thousands of people gathered to watch plays. The builders did not just put it here for the beautiful view. The steep, natural bowl of the rocky hill acts as a massive acoustic amplifier. The shape of the earth catches sound and pushes it upward. A single actor could stand on the dirt stage and speak in a normal voice. The sound would travel perfectly to the very top row of seats. Up to 17,000 spectators could hear every single word without any modern speakers. The architects used the natural curve of the land to build a perfect sound machine. You can still sit on the warm marble benches today. If you listen closely, you can almost hear the faint echoes of ancient voices rising from the quiet stage below. Right next to the open-air seats once stood a very different kind of performance space. The Odeon of Pericles was a massive, square music hall built for indoor concerts. It was a dark, cavernous room filled with rows of wooden benches. The most amazing part of this building was its enormous, pyramid-shaped roof. This towering canopy was entirely supported by thick, dark wooden beams. These were not normal trees cut from a local forest. They were the salvaged wooden masts of enemy ships captured during a famous sea battle. The city took the broken pieces of a defeated fleet and turned them into a roof. When people sat inside to listen to music, they looked up at the spoils of war. The music echoed against the very wood that had once threatened to destroy them. It was a powerful, quiet reminder of their survival, built right into the ceiling. Centuries later, another grand music hall was built into the southern slope. The Odeon of Herodaticus is a stunning stone theatre that still hosts concerts today. When it was first built, it looked very different than the open ruin we see now. It originally featured a spectacular, massive roof made of expensive cedar wood. This enormous timber canopy stretched entirely over the wide seating area. It provided deep, cool shade for the audience during hot afternoon performances. The rich wood also trapped the sound, making the music feel warm and close. The scent of cedar would have filled the air as the musicians played. That beautiful wooden roof was lost to fire and time long ago. Now the stone seats sit open beneath the night sky. But you can still imagine the dark, fragrant canopy that once covered this grand space. It was a masterpiece of ancient carpentry. Across a small valley from the temples, sits a quiet, rocky hill called the Pnyx. This was the beating heart of the ancient government. The Democratic Assembly met here to vote on laws and debate the future. To make enough flat space for thousands of citizens, builders had to change the hill. They artificially leveled the slope, using a massive, curved, retaining wall. This wall was built from cyclopean blocks of limestone. The stones were so heavy and huge that they looked like giants placed them. It took complex wooden cranes and hundreds of men to maneuver them into place. They fit the irregular shapes together perfectly, without any mortar. This massive wall held back tons of earth to create a flat, stable stage. The weight of the stone matches the heavy burden of the choices made here. The very ground of democracy was engineered with sweat and raw power. At the center of this flat gathering space sits a simple, three-stepped platform. This is the bema, the official speaker's podium for the assembly. It was not built out of loose stones or imported marble. It was carved directly out of the living limestone bedrock of the hill. The platform is permanently rooted to the earth. The builders intentionally oriented this rock so it faced a specific direction. Any politician standing on it was forced to look down at the bustling city below. They could see the markets, the homes, and the smoke from the hearths. They could not hide from the reality of daily life. The view served as a constant, quiet reminder of the people they served. When a leader spoke, the entire city watched them from below. The stone itself demanded honesty. It anchored the speaker to the heavy truth of the world just down the hill. Down in the valley below the hills lies the agora, the central public marketplace. The edges of this busy square were marked by simple, short marble posts. These stones were called horoi, and they stood quietly in the dirt. Each one was carved with a clear message. I am the boundary of the agora. These posts were not just helpful signs for lost travelers. They formed a strict, invisible legal barrier around the civic heart of the town. Anyone convicted of a crime was forbidden from stepping past them. People deemed ritually impure were also banned from entering the square. The stones kept the center of the city clean and safe. They drew a firm line between the wild world and the ordered space of the market. You can still find these weathered posts standing in the dust today. They silently guard a border that faded away centuries ago. Beneath the dusty surface of this central square lies a massive piece of hidden engineering. The Great Drain is a deep, stone-lined channel built to capture winter rain. The marketplace sits in a low valley surrounded by steep hills. When heavy storms hit, water rushes down the slopes toward the center of town. Without this hidden infrastructure, the public square would have turned into a muddy swamp every winter. The builders dug a wide trench and lined it with perfectly cut polygonal stone blocks. This dry underground river safely carried the floodwaters away from the walking paths. It kept the heart of the city dry and functioning all year round. Most people walked right over it without ever knowing it was there. It is a quiet reminder that great cities rely on invisible systems. The most important architecture is often buried deep in the dark earth below our feet. At the edge of the dark marketplace stood a very strange circular building. This was the Tholos, and it served as the city's 24-hour emergency center. It had a round stone wall and a conical terracotta roof that looked like a large hat. Inside, 50 executive council members dined and slept at public expense. They took turns living in this round house for weeks at a time. Their job was to ensure that the government was always awake and functioning. Even in the dead of night, someone was always on duty here. If a fire broke out, or an enemy attacked, the leaders were ready to act. The warm glow of oil lamps shone from its open doorway until dawn. It was a comforting light for the night watchman walking the empty streets. The round building was the open, sleepless eye of the ancient city. Just a few steps away stood a long stone fence supporting several bronze statues. This was the monument of the eponymous heroes. Before newspapers or digital screens existed, the city used this fence to communicate. It was the central bulletin board for the entire population. Every day, officials hung white wooden notice boards from the stone base. These boards were covered in black text, announcing important news. Citizens gathered here to read about military drafts, new laws, and upcoming court cases. If you wanted to know what was happening in the world, you came to this spot. The bronze warriors stood silently above, watching the crowds read the daily news. It was a place of constant chatter and quiet reading. The stone is empty now, but it was once the most informed corner of the city. It was the ancient version of a morning paper, carved in rock and wood. On the northern edge of the square stood a long, open-air marble colonnade. This was the Stoa Poikile, or the painted porch. It was a simple, shaded walkway, where people could escape the hot afternoon sun. The back wall was covered in vibrant, massive wooden panel paintings, depicting ancient military victories. It was a beautiful, quiet place to walk and think. Over time, it became the favorite gathering spot for a specific group of deep thinkers. They would pace back and forth under the painted roof, discussing logic and virtue. Because they spent so much time in this specific porch, people gave them a nickname. They became known simply as the Stoics, named directly after the building itself. A whole school of philosophy was born in the shade of these marble columns. The ideas outlasted the wooden paintings, but the name of the porch lives on in our language today. A small ancient river called the Eridanos still flows quietly beneath the modern city. In the classical era, this stream ran right through the busy streets. To prevent flooding and keep the roads clean, builders carefully channeled it underground. They used sturdy stone masonry to build a dark, safe tunnel for the water. The river vanished from the sunlight, but it never stopped flowing. It has been running through the dark for thousands of years. Today, if you stand in certain subway stations or quiet basements, you can still hear it. The buried waters rush softly beneath the heavy concrete and asphalt. It is a gentle, natural pulse, hidden under the noise of traffic. The city grew tall and heavy, but it could not stop the little river. The water simply found a new path in the dark. It is a secret, liquid thread tying the past to the present. Before the rivers were buried, the most important public water source was a grand pavilion. It was called the Eniakrounos, which means the nine-spouted fountain house. It was a beautiful shaded stone structure where people gathered every morning. Clear, cool water flowed continuously from 9 ornate bronze lion-head spouts. The water splashed softly into long, worn stone basins. Women came here with heavy clay jugs to collect water for their homes. It was a place to rest in the shade and share the news of the day. The sound of the rushing water echoed off the stone walls, creating a peaceful atmosphere. The bronze lions watched calmly as the city woke up around them. This fountain was the lifeblood of the early town. It provided a steady, reliable rhythm to the start of every single day. The cool water was a daily gift to the dusty streets. While the public fountains were busy, many private homes had their own quiet water supply. Beneath the sunlit courtyards of these houses lay hidden, bottle-shaped cisterns. These deep underground chambers were carved directly into the solid bedrock. Builders carefully lined the rock walls with smooth, waterproof plaster. During the wet winter months, rain would wash off the clay roofs and flow down into the dark tanks. The cisterns collected and stored this precious water all year long. They provided families with a quiet, cool supply during the long, dry summer months. When the public fountains ran low, these hidden pools kept the homes alive. You could drop a bucket down the narrow neck and hear it splash in the deep dark. It was a private, silent reserve of life, hidden right beneath the family garden. The earth held the winter rain safe until the hot summer demanded it. In a quiet stone plaza stands a tall, octagonal marble building. This is the Tower of the Winds, an ancient meteorological station. It was built to help people understand the weather and track the passing of time. Every single face of the 8-sided tower features a carefully carved sundial. When the sun was shining, you could read the time from almost any angle. Inside the cool, dark tower sat a complex water clock. This machine kept the time on cloudy days, or during the long nights. On the very top of the roof stood a bronze wind vane shaped like a sea god. It spun in the breeze to show which way the weather was moving. The tower was a beautiful silent machine made of stone and water. It stood in the busy city, calmly measuring the invisible forces of the sky. It brought order to the shifting winds. Tucked between the main city gates was a large, specialized building called the Pompeion. It was a wide, open stone courtyard, surrounded by simple colonnades. This structure served one single, very specific purpose for the city. It was the storage house for the massive wooden floats used in grand religious parades. When the festivals ended, the giant wooden ships on wheels were rolled into this courtyard. The costumes, masks and heavy props were packed away in the shaded rooms. For most of the year, the building was completely silent and still. It was a quiet resting place for the loud, colorful tools of celebration. The wooden wheels sat motionless on the stone floor, waiting for the next holy day. It is strange to think of a building dedicated entirely to waiting. It held the sleeping joy of the city safely behind closed doors until it was time to parade again. Just past the parade storage stood the main entrance to the city, the Dipolon Gate. This was not just a simple door in a wall. It was engineered as a massive, open-air courtyard designed for defense. If an enemy army managed to break through the first set of heavy wooden doors, they would celebrate too soon. They would rush forward, only to find themselves trapped in a walled box. High defensive walls towered on either side of this deep, rectangular stone trap. The invaders would be completely exposed to a deadly crossfire from defenders standing safely above. It was a brilliant, brutal piece of military architecture. The gate invited attackers in, only to lock them in a stone cage. On peaceful days, merchants and travelers walked through this courtyard without a second thought. But the high walls were always waiting, ready to turn a simple road into a dead end. Right outside these massive gates lay the city's main burial ground, the Kerameikos. When the great defensive walls were built, they abruptly bisected this peaceful area. The urgent need for protection sliced right through the ancient resting place. Tombs and marble monuments were constructed right up against the rough stone fortifications. This created a stark physical boundary between the city of the living and the city of the dead. Inside the wall, the streets were loud with markets and moving carts. Just inches away on the outside, ornate gravestones stood silently in the dirt. The wall was a hard line between the present and the past. People walking on the battlements could look down at the quiet statues of their ancestors. The dead seemed to gather at the gates, watching over the city they had built. The heavy stone wall kept the living safe, but it left the dead behind. The city wakes slowly in the cool air of early morning. You can feel the quiet anticipation building near the main gates. This is the start of the grandest civic ritual in ancient Athens. It is known as the Panathenaic procession. At dawn, a massive parade begins to form. Citizens, musicians, and riders gather together in the soft light. They slowly wind their way up a wide, dusty path. This diagonal route is called the Panathenaic Way. It cuts right through the heart of the city. The crowd moves with a shared, steady rhythm. They are all walking toward the high, rocky hill of the Acropolis. Up there, the great marble temples catch the first rays of the sun. The air fills with the sound of hundreds of footsteps. It is a moment of deep civic pride. The entire city seems to breathe as one. They walk upward, leaving the lower streets behind. On certain spring mornings, the rhythm shifts before the sun even rises. During the great festival of the city Dionysia, the theatre is not an evening event. Instead, citizens gather in the dark. They walk to the open-air seating on the southern slope of the hill. The air is still sharp and cold. People sit close together on the stone benches. They wrap themselves tightly in heavy woolen cloaks against the chill. They wait patiently in the dim blue light of early dawn. Soon, the actors will step onto the stage. They will perform grand tragedies that last continuously through the heat of the day. The audience watches as the sky slowly brightens. The stories unfold as the sun climbs higher. It is a shared experience of endurance and art. The whole city sits still, captivated by the voices echoing up the curved stone bowl. The morning light slowly warms the cold seats. Behind the wooden stage, the preparations are intense and quiet. The spectacular costumes and masks require immense skill and resources. The training for the theatrical choruses is rigorous. Yet, the state does not pay for any of this. Instead, the burden falls on a wealthy citizen known as a choregos. He is legally required to fund the entire production. This is a unique form of public taxation. It turns a basic civic duty into a fierce artistic competition. The sponsor pays for the thick woolen garments and the brightly painted masks. He hires the best trainers for the singers. If his chorus wins, he gains great honor in the city. You can almost feel the quiet tension backstage. The rich fabrics hang on wooden pegs, waiting for the actors. The sponsor watches his investment come to life. It is a heavy cost, but the glory lasts for a lifetime. Away from the theater, the daily chores begin at first light. One of the few times women regularly leave their homes is early in the morning. They step out into the cool air to fetch fresh water. They walk together to the public fountain houses. The most famous is the Eniakrounos, with its many flowing spouts. The women carry large, beautifully painted ceramic jugs called hydria. They balance the heavy vessels with practiced grace. As the water splashes onto the wet stone floor, voices fill the air. This daily chore doubles as the primary social hour for the women of the city. They share news and quiet stories while their jugs fill up. The sound of flowing water mixes with gentle laughter. It is a peaceful, private rhythm in the waking city. Once the vessels are full, they lift them carefully. They walk back through the narrow streets before the day gets too hot. Once back inside, the daily life of these women remains largely hidden. Their world is confined to the inner or upper rooms of the house. This private space is called the gynaeceum. Here they stay safely away from the public eye of the busy streets. The rooms are quiet, shaded from the harsh midday sun. Small windows let in soft, indirect light. In these peaceful quarters, the women manage the household finances. They carefully supervise the domestic slaves and organize the daily meals. Much of their time is spent working with their hands. They sit for hours, spinning raw wool into fine thread. The wooden spindles turn with a steady, hypnotic rhythm. Baskets of unspun fleece rest on low wooden tables. The work is slow and requires great patience. It is a quiet, constant hum of activity. This hidden labor keeps the household running smoothly, day after day. High above the city, a much more sacred weaving task takes place. Every year, 2 young girls live in a quiet house near the great temples. They are known as the Arepharoi. They leave their families to perform a special holy duty. In a sunlit stone room, they are responsible for setting up an ancient wooden loom. They initiate the weaving of a beautiful, saffron-colored woolen robe. This sacred garment is called the peplos. The bright yellow wool glows warmly in the dusty light. The young girls start the intricate pattern with careful, tiny hands. Later, older women will take over to finish the heavy fabric. Once completed, the robe is draped over a very old wooden statue of the city's patron goddess. The girls live a quiet, sheltered life during their time here. They work in peaceful silence, high above the noise of the streets below. Down in the lower city, the morning rhythm is much louder. The central marketplace, known as the Agora, is a vast, dusty square. Its daily pace is dictated by the arrival of fresh seafood. At mid-morning, a loud bell rings sharply through the open air. This sound signals that the fish carts have finally arrived from the harbor. The ringing causes a sudden, chaotic rush of buyers. People hurry toward the wooden stalls to get the best catch. Fresh fish are laid out on wet marble slabs, shining in the bright sunlight. The smell of the sea fills the warm air. Buyers inspect the silver scales and bargain over prices. The calm morning instantly turns into a noisy, bustling scene. It is a daily frenzy that everyone expects and enjoys. Once the best fish are sold, the crowd slowly thins out. The market settles back into a steady, murmuring hum. Order in this chaotic marketplace is maintained in a very unusual way. The city relies on a unique police force made up of public slaves. They are brought from the distant land of Scythia. You can easily spot them walking through the dusty crowds. They wear distinctive, brightly patterned trousers and pointed caps. Each man is armed with a curved wooden bow. These archers patrol the busy stalls with a calm, watchful presence. They step in to break up sudden fights between angry merchants. They enforce the strict market regulations and keep the walkways clear. Their strange clothing stands out sharply against the simple tunics of the locals. People respect their authority and give them space to pass. The archers move quietly, their bows always ready in their hands. They are a constant, colorful reminder of the city's strict laws. They keep the bustling heart of the town running smoothly. Sometimes, the archers have a much larger task to perform. When it is time for a mandatory political assembly, the square must be emptied. The Scythian guards use a very simple, messy trick to clear the crowds. Two men hold a long, thick rope between them. This rope is heavily dipped in wet, bright red paint. They sweep the dripping rope across the open ground, walking forward steadily. The merchants and buyers quickly scatter to get out of the way. Anyone who lingers too long gets a red stripe on their clothes. That red mark is a sign of shame. It means the person is fined for avoiding their civic duty. The threat of ruined clothing works perfectly. The dusty square empties out in a matter of minutes. The citizens hurry up the hill to listen to the political speeches. The archers roll up their red rope, their job complete. Nearby, the city's justice system begins its own daily routine. Every morning, the courts rely on a clever stone machine. It is called a cleritarian. It is a tall, flat slab covered in neat rows of horizontal slots. Citizens step up and insert their small bronze ID tickets into the stone. Then, an official turns a crank on the side of the machine. This action releases a mix of black and white dice down a tube. The random order of the dice selects who will serve on a jury that day. It is a brilliant, simple way to prevent bribery and corruption. No one knows if they will be chosen until the dice fall. The bronze tickets clink softly against the stone in the morning sun. The men wait patiently to see their fate. It is a quiet moment of pure chance. The machine ensures that justice remains fair and unpredictable. Inside the bustling law courts, time is carefully controlled. Speeches are strictly timed to prevent endless boring rambling. The courts use a simple water clock called a clepsydra. It consists of two large terracotta pots sitting on a stone stand. A thin, steady stream of water drips from the top pot into the bottom one. The speaker can only talk while the water is flowing. Everyone watches the water level drop as the arguments heat up. When the top vessel is finally empty, the dripping stops. At that exact moment, the speaker must stop talking immediately. There are no exceptions and no extra minutes allowed. The sound of the dripping water is a constant, quiet reminder of passing time. It forces men to be clear and direct with their words. The simple clay pots hold the power to silence the loudest voices. The rhythm of justice is measured in drops. Civic duty begins early in the life of a young man. When they turn 18, they enter mandatory military service. They gather at a small, rugged sanctuary built into the steep cliffs. Here, they swear a solemn pledge known as the Ephebic Oath. The young men stand together in their simple cloaks. The morning sunlight warms the bare rock faces around them. They raise their hands and speak the ancient words in unison. They pledge to obey the laws of the city at all times. They promise to leave their fatherland greater and better than they found it. It is a quiet, serious moment of transition into adulthood. The city trusts them to protect its walls and its future. The wind blows softly across the high stone altar. They walk down from the cliffs as full citizens. Their childhood is officially over, replaced by the heavy weight of duty. In the late afternoon, the men gather outside the city walls. They walk to the public gymnasiums, like the famous academy. These are shaded, sandy courtyards, surrounded by tall stone columns. Exercise here is a daily ritual, and it is performed entirely naked. Before wrestling, the athletes prepare their skin with great care. They coat their bodies in a thick, heavy mixture of olive oil and fine dust. Small terracotta jugs of oil sit ready on the smooth stone benches. The oil protects their skin from the harsh sun and the rough sand. The dust gives their opponents something to grip during a match. The courtyard smells of warm earth and rich oil. The men grapple and run in the fading afternoon light. It is a space of intense focus and quiet physical effort. The sand shifts under their bare feet with every sudden movement. After exercising, the athletes do not use soap to clean themselves. The mixture of oil, sweat and dirt is too thick to just wash away. Instead, They use a special, curved bronze tool called a strigil. They sit on the stone benches and press the dull metal against their skin. They physically scrape the heavy layer of grime off their arms and legs. The bronze tool makes a soft scraping sound as it moves. It is a slow, methodical process that takes time and patience. They clean every inch of their tired muscles. Only after the thickest dirt is removed do they finally rinse off. They pour cold, refreshing water over their heads from large clay jugs. The cool water washes away the last traces of the sandy courtyard. The dull bronze scrapers are wiped clean and left on the benches. The men leave the grounds feeling light and restored. Because the ancient streets have no public lights, the rhythm shifts dramatically at dusk. As the sun sets, the city prepares for the coming dark. Households quietly light small, simple terracotta oil lamps. They place them carefully on windowsills and near open doorways. These little flames cast a faint, flickering glow against the blank stone walls. The narrow, unpaved alleyways quickly plunge into near-total darkness. The shadows grow long and deep between the close buildings. People stop walking outside, and the noisy streets fall completely silent. The smell of burning olive oil drifts softly through the cool night air. You can see isolated pockets of warm, orange light dotting the hills. The city folds inward, retreating behind heavy wooden doors. The darkness brings a deep, restful peace to the tired town. The tiny lamps burn quietly, keeping the heavy night at bay until the morning comes. Behind those closed doors, the evening continues for the wealthy men. After dinner, they gather in a specific, painted room of the house. This private gathering is called the symposium. The men recline comfortably on low wooden dining couches. The room is dimly lit by the warm glow of several oil lamps. The evening always begins with a very careful, deliberate ritual. A large, ornate ceramic bowl is placed right in the center of the room. Here, they mix thick, strong wine with fresh water. Drinking unmixed wine is considered barbaric and dangerous. The host decides the exact ratio of water to wine for the night. The dark liquid is stirred slowly, releasing a sweet, earthy scent. The men talk, sing and share stories late into the night. The central bowl anchors the room, a symbol of civilized friendship. The quiet murmur of voices drifts out into the dark courtyard. In the potter's quarter, known as the Keramakos, the work never stops. Here, the rhythm of labor extends deep into the dark night. The dusty courtyards are illuminated by intense, roaring orange fires. Large, dome-shaped clay kilns are intentionally fired after the sun goes down. The master potters stay awake to watch the burning ovens. They can only judge the exact temperature by observing the specific color of the flames. In the daylight, the subtle shifts in the fire are impossible to see. At night, the glowing heat tells them exactly when the clay is ready. The men feed wood into the hungry fires, their faces shining with sweat. The smell of wood smoke and baking earth fills the cool night air. Sparks float up toward the dark, starry sky. It is a hot, quiet vigil that requires years of practiced skill. The beautiful vases are born in this midnight heat. On a barren rock near the Acropolis, another night ritual takes place. The most serious murder trials are held by the ancient council of the Areopagus. The judges often choose to meet in the dead of night. They sit in a circle on the rough, bare limestone outcrop. The pale light of a full moon is their only illumination. They judge in the dark for a very specific, solemn reason. They want to hear the spoken arguments without any visual distractions. They refuse to be swayed by the sad appearance of the victim's family. They also ignore the wealthy clothes of the accused. In the dark, only the facts and the voices matter. The cold night wind blows across the empty stone. The judges listen in absolute heavy silence. It is a chilling, serious atmosphere, stripped of all emotion. The truth is weighed carefully under the quiet, watchful stars. When winter fades, the arrival of spring brings a much lighter mood. The city celebrates the Anthesteria, a joyous 3-day festival. This event marks the opening of the new, fermented wine. The air feels fresh, and the mood is incredibly festive. People gather outdoors in the bright spring sunlight. Large open clay amphorae are unsealed, releasing the sweet smell of young wine. It is a happy occasion where everyone takes part, even the youth. Young children are given their very first taste of the drink. They receive small, beautifully painted miniature ceramic jugs made just for them. The kids proudly hold their tiny vessels, feeling like adults for the day. Laughter and music fill the open spaces of the city. The new wine is poured and shared among friends and neighbors. It is a moment of pure, simple gratitude for the changing of the seasons. However, the final day of this spring festival takes a dark turn. The joyful celebration suddenly becomes a solemn Day of the Dead. The city believes that spirits roam the streets on this specific day. Families stay inside and prepare simple, quiet offerings. They boil rough clay pots full of seeds and sweet honey. These pots are placed on small stone altars inside the dimly lit homes. The food is meant to appease the wandering ghosts of their ancestors. The mood is tense and quiet, lit only by faint oil lamps. At the very end of the day, the ritual reaches its peak. The head of the household stands up and shouts a firm command. They yell, "Out the door, ghosts! The festival is over!" This sudden shout is believed to cleanse the house completely. The doors are shut tight, and the spirits are banished for another year. In late summer, the city experiences a massive, quiet exodus. The streets empty out for the sacred Eleusinian mysteries. Thousands of initiates gather to walk 14 miles away from the town. They travel along a winding dirt road known as the Sacred Way. The massive crowd moves slowly toward the distant sanctuary at Eleusis. As the sun sets, the procession stretches far into the darkening night. The walkers carry bundles of leafy branches in their hands. They light wooden torches that flicker brightly against the evening sky. The long line of fire looks like a glowing river moving through the hills. The air is filled with chanted hymns, and the smell of burning pitch. It is a deeply personal journey for every person walking. They are seeking secret knowledge and spiritual peace. The city is left behind, silent and mostly empty, waiting for their return. Before that long walk can even begin, the initiates must purify themselves. In a strange, quiet ritual, the crowds head to the coast. Thousands of people walk down to the calm waters of Phaleron Beach. They arrive in the soft, cool light of early dawn. The initiates wear simple tunics and step barefoot onto the sand. They wade waist-deep into the gentle, rolling saltwater waves. Each person carries a small, live piglet in their arms. They ritually wash themselves and the animal in the cold sea. The saltwater is believed to wash away all past sins and impurities. The beach is crowded, but the mood is incredibly peaceful and focused. The sound of the gentle surf mixes with the quiet splashing of water. The morning sun slowly rises over the wet, shining sand. They step out of the sea, feeling clean and ready for the sacred mysteries. When autumn arrives, the grape harvest brings a different kind of energy. The city celebrates the Oskophoria with a very unique, joyful foot race. Young men gather near the temple of Dionysus in the bright afternoon sun. They dress in flowing women's clothing for this specific, ancient tradition. The runners hold long, leafy vine branches in their hands. These branches are heavy, with fresh, dark purple, unpicked grapes. At the signal, they sprint down the dusty dirt road toward the harbor. The heavy grapes bounce and sway as they run toward the distant sea. The crowd cheers loudly, watching the strange, colorful race unfold. The sweet smell of crushed fruit fills the warm autumn air. It is a playful, energetic way to honor the vital grape harvest. The runners arrive at the water, out of breath and laughing. The city welcomes the new season with speed and joy. Later in the autumn, The countryside is consumed by the olive harvest. The rocky hills around the city are covered in ancient, gnarled trees. Families head out into the dusty groves, under the bright midday sun. They spread large, rough, woven cloths on the ground beneath the branches. Then, they take up long, heavy wooden sticks. They beat the leafy branches with steady, forceful strikes. This creates a rhythmic thwacking sound that echoes across the quiet hills. Green and black olives rain down onto the linen cloths below. The work is hard, but it brings the families together in shared labor. The smell of crushed olive leaves is sharp and fresh in the air. They gather the fallen fruit into large woven baskets. This simple, timeless harvest provides the oil that lights the entire city. The hills ring with the sound of the beating sticks until dusk. During the autumn festival of Palinopsia, the harvest is brought home. The city streets echo with the quiet, happy footsteps of children. They walk from house to house, carrying a special object called the iresione. This is a simple olive branch, carefully wrapped in pure white wool. The children adorn it with fresh figs, baked breads and small jars of honey. They hang these decorated branches above the wooden doorways of the homes. It is a beautiful, hopeful gesture to invite prosperity for the coming year. The fresh fruit and bread look bright against the blank stone walls. The sweet smell of honey and baked dough lingers in the morning air. The old, dried branches from the previous year are finally taken down. The new ones take their place, a promise of future abundance. The city settles into the cool autumn, feeling blessed and fully prepared. The exact center of ancient Athens was not a grand temple on a high hill. It was a small, quiet stone block, sitting in the dust of the main market. They called it the Altar of the 12 Gods. It looked entirely unremarkable. Yet this low stone fence held the geographic heart of the entire region. Every single distance to other towns was measured from this specific spot. If a traveler wanted to know how far they had walked, the math started right here. You can imagine the daily life of the city swirling around this quiet anchor. Merchants shouted prices just a few feet away. Carts rattled past on the dirt paths. But the altar simply sat there, holding the map together. It is a strange thought. The most important point on the map was just a humble stone in the dirt. It watched the city wake up every single morning. If you walked away from that central market, the grand public spaces quickly vanished. The residential streets of the city were notoriously awful. They were unpaved and winding. Most were less than 3 meters wide. The grand marble architecture belonged only to the gods and the state. Ordinary people lived in a maze of blank mud brick walls. The alleys were dark and cramped. Sometimes, neighbors refused to give up even an inch of their property. This created tiny, useless gaps between houses. People called them spite alleys. They were too narrow for a person to walk through. They existed only because of stubborn pride. You can almost feel the claustrophobia of those winding dirt paths. A thin slice of harsh sunlight might reach the ground at noon. Otherwise, the streets stayed in deep shadow. It was a chaotic, crowded place. The pristine white city of our imagination stops at the front door. Sometimes, that stubborn civic pride spilled right out into those narrow streets. A wealthy citizen named Lycicrates once sponsored a winning chorus in a local theatre competition. His prize was a beautiful bronze tripod. Most men would simply take such a trophy home. Lycicrates had a different idea. He bought a small plot of land on a busy street. Then, he built a permanent marble cylinder just to show off his prize. The monument stood 30 feet tall. It was covered in ornate carvings and elegant columns. He placed his bronze tripod right on top. It was a massive, expensive display of ego. The structure forced everyone walking down the street to look up and admire his victory. It is a deeply human kind of vanity. The city was full of these strange, personal monuments. They stood like quiet boasts in the middle of the daily traffic. That same desire for attention often played out in the dusty streets. The controversial politician Alcibiades understood how easily people could be distracted. He owned a beautiful, incredibly expensive hound. The dog was famous for its magnificent tail. One day, Alcibiades simply cut the tail off. He had no practical reason to do this. When he walked the docked dog through the city, people stared. They pointed and whispered about the ruined animal. Later, he admitted the truth. He ruined the dog's tail on purpose. He wanted the citizens to gossip about his strange pet. If they were talking about the dog, they were not talking about his worst political scandals. It was a calculated piece of street theater. The trick worked perfectly. The people focused on the minor outrage. They completely ignored the larger problems. It is a very old version of a very modern trick. Just down the road, a different kind of public behavior was strictly controlled. A carved marble slab at the Library of Pantainos reveals a very familiar set of rules. Strict library etiquette is thousands of years old. The heavy stone inscription plainly states the law of the building. No book may be taken out under oath. The reading rooms were only open from dawn until midday. You can picture the quiet morning light falling across wooden shelves. Scholars unrolled papyrus scrolls in the cool shade of the portico. The rules were carved in stone because people have always tried to steal books. The librarians did not trust anyone to bring a text back. So the knowledge stayed locked inside the walls. When the sun reached its peak, the doors closed. The readers had to leave their studies behind. The ancient city valued its quiet hours just as much as its debates. Down in the busy market, trust was also in very short supply. To keep merchants from cheating their customers, the city took strict measures. They kept a master set of official bronze weights, locked inside a round building, called the tholos. They also kept standard liquid measures there. These objects were perfectly cast and stamped with the symbol of an owl. Market inspectors would patrol the wooden stalls every day. They carried copies of these master weights. If a merchant was selling grain or oil, the inspector checked their scales. If the merchant's weights did not match the official bronze, they were in trouble. Their goods were immediately confiscated. The city ran on this quiet, heavy bronze truth. You can imagine the tension when an inspector stopped at a stall. The soft clink of metal on a wooden table decided a person's livelihood. Fairness was enforced by the weight of the state. That strict control over value extended to the money in people's pockets. The local silver coin was called the tetradrachm. It was thick and heavy. One side featured the head of a goddess. The other side showed a wide-eyed owl and an olive sprig. This simple piece of silver became the first widely used international currency. It was trusted from the markets of Egypt all the way to Babylon. The reason for this trust was incredibly simple. The city stubbornly refused to ever lower the purity of the silver. Even during terrible wars, they never mixed cheaper metals into the coins. A merchant in a distant port knew exactly what the owl coin was worth. It was a rare kind of reliability in an uncertain world. The heavy silver felt cool and solid in the hand. It was a promise that the city kept for centuries, stamped into metal. The government was very careful about how it collected that silver. They even levied a highly specific tax on sex workers. But the state did not have a massive bureaucracy to handle the paperwork. Instead, they auctioned off the right to collect this tax to private citizens. A wealthy man would pay the city a lump sum up front. Then, he would patrol the streets to get his money back. These private collectors walked from door to door. They kept careful tallies on wax tablets. They made sure every brothel paid its daily dues. It was a strange, decentralized way to run a city. The government outsourced its most awkward jobs to anyone willing to pay for the privilege. You can picture a tax collector sitting at a wooden table in the morning sun. He counted small silver coins, turning a private vice into public infrastructure. Some laws were so strange that they created entirely new professions. The modern word for a flatterer is sycophant, but in the ancient city, it originally meant something like fig shower. It referred to petty informants who made a living by reporting their neighbors. The region had a bizarre, hyper-specific law on the books. It was completely illegal to export figs beyond the local borders. No one is entirely sure why this rule existed, but the informants used it to their advantage. They watched the dusty roads for anyone carrying baskets of the purple fruit. If they caught a smuggler, they turned them in for a reward. These fig showers became universally despised. They were the ultimate busybodies, ruining lives over a basket of fruit. The word eventually shifted to mean any self-serving flatterer. But it started with the sweet smell of ripe figs and a very petty betrayal. The local agriculture was heavily protected by these strange specific rules. Honey production was taken just as seriously as the fig trade. The sweet syrup was a vital resource. To protect it, the government created strict zoning laws for bees. Early legislation dictated exactly where a person could place a new beehive. Any new apiary had to be at least 300 feet away from an existing one. This prevented neighboring swarms from fighting over the same wildflowers. It also stopped neighbors from fighting each other. You can imagine the quiet olive groves in the late afternoon. Woven wicker hives sat on stone platforms in the dappled light. The air hummed with the sound of thousands of bees. The law ensured that this peaceful rhythm was never disturbed. The state measured the distance between hives to keep the peace. Even the insects had to follow the city's careful geometry. The legal system extended its reach into every corner of daily life. It even applied to things that were not alive. If a falling roof tile caused a fatal accident, the object itself was put on trial. The same rule applied to a runaway cart or a falling piece of wood. The city's magistrates would gather in a quiet stone courtyard to hear the case. They formally accused the inanimate object of murder. If the stone or wood was found guilty, it faced a very serious punishment. The offending item was ceremoniously exiled. Guards would carry the broken tile beyond the borders of the region and leave it in the dirt. It sounds absurd to modern ears, but it was a way to restore balance to the world. Someone had to pay for the tragedy. Even a silent, broken piece of terracotta had to answer to the law. The courts also cared deeply about what people said to each other. There were strict laws against slander, but they had very specific boundaries. It was completely illegal to speak ill of the dead, no matter where you were. But slandering a living person was a different story. You could insult someone in the street without breaking the law. It was only illegal if you did it inside a temple, a court, or a public office. If you lost your temper in a sacred space, you had to pay a fine of 3 drachmas. You can picture 2 men arguing in the shaded porch of a marble building. They had to keep their voices low, and their words careful. The law created pockets of forced politeness across the city. You could ruin a man's reputation in the market, but you had to hold your tongue in the house of a god. When people could not speak their anger aloud, they found other ways to strike. Citizens frequently engaged in petty magical sabotage. If a man had an upcoming court case, he might try to silence his rival with a curse. People would write terrible things on thin sheets of dull grey lead. They folded the metal into small squares. Then, they dropped the lead into public wells in the dead of night. They believed the dark, wet stones at the bottom of the well connected to the underworld. The cold water would carry their spite down to the spirits. It was a quiet, invisible kind of warfare. A merchant might curse a competitor's business just to get ahead. You can imagine the soft splash of a lead square hitting the water in the dark. The city was full of these hidden grudges, sinking slowly to the bottom of the drinking supply. When those bitter court cases finally went to trial, secrecy was absolute. The juries were massive, and the stakes were incredibly high. To protect the jurors from intimidation, the courts used specialized bronze voting discs. Each disc had a small axle right in the center. A solid axle meant the defendant was innocent. A pierced axle meant they were guilty. When it was time to vote, the juror pinched the center axle between their thumb and fingers. This completely hid the shape of the metal. They held their hand over a large bronze urn, and simply let go. No one could see which disc dropped into the shadows. The soft clatter of bronze against bronze was the only sound. It was a brilliant piece of physical design. The truth was hidden in the palm of a hand. The verdict remained a total secret until the urn was finally emptied. That same desire to control a vote showed up in local politics. The citizens had the power to banish a politician by scratching his name on a broken piece of pottery. These voting sherds were called ostraka. Archaeologists once found a stash of nearly 200 of these fragments in the dirt. Every single one bore the name of a politician named Themistocles. But handwriting analysis revealed a fascinating secret. The names were written by only 14 different people. Ancient political operatives had pre-written the ballots. They handed them out to illiterate voters on their way to the assembly. It was a quiet, organized effort to rig the system. You can picture a small group of men sitting in the sun, scratching the same name over and over. The broken pottery tells a very human story. Political machines and dirty tricks are just as old as voting itself. The place where those votes happened was surprisingly harsh. Despite being the birthplace of this new political system, the main assembly had no seating. The gathering place was a sloping hill called the Phoenix. Up to 6,000 citizens would arrive to debate the future of the city. They simply sat down on the bare, hard limestone bedrock. There were no benches and no shade. They stayed there for hours at a time. They were exposed to the blazing summer sun or the freezing winter wind. You can imagine the physical discomfort of listening to a long speech on cold stone. The rough-hewn rock offered no comfort at all. Participating in the government was an endurance test. The citizens shifted on the hard ground, waiting for their turn to speak. The grand ideas of the state were born on a very unforgiving piece of earth. When the state decided to punish one of its own, the method was chillingly calm. The execution method for high-status citizens was a cup of poison hemlock. The philosopher Socrates famously died this way in a dim, stone-walled cell. The state did not use violence or public spectacle for these men. Instead, they offered a simple terracotta cup resting on a wooden table. The poison did not cause pain. It caused a slow, creeping numbness. The paralysis started in the feet and slowly moved up the legs. The prisoner remained completely awake as their body shut down. They could talk with their friends until the cold reached their heart. It was a terrifyingly peaceful way to die. The pale daylight from a small window watched the slow fade of life. The city preferred this quiet, orderly end. It kept the blood off the hands of the executioner. The fear of making a fatal mistake haunted the city's religious life too. The people were terrified of accidentally offending a deity they had never heard of. They worried that some obscure or foreign god might curse them for being ignored. To prevent this, they built small, weathered stone altars on the rocky hillsides. They dedicated these shrines simply to the unknown god. It was a spiritual insurance policy. This ensured that every possible divine power received a share of the sacrifices. You can picture a faint Greek inscription catching the warm evening sunlight. A small offering of fruit rested on the stone. It is a beautiful, anxious gesture. They admitted that they did not know everything about the universe. They left a space for the mysteries they could not name. The city covered its bases, hoping the quiet smoke would appease whatever was watching from the dark. Some of the known gods required very strange rituals from the citizens. Before marriage, young girls were often sent away to a rural sanctuary. This quiet, grassy courtyard belonged to the wild goddess Artemis. The girls were sent there to act as little bears. They wore bright saffron yellow robes and ran races in the dirt. It was a strange required ritual to transition into adulthood. They had to appease the wildness of nature before they could settle into domestic life. You can imagine the small yellow woolen robes hanging neatly on wooden pegs in the evening light. The girls lived away from their families, learning the secrets of the sanctuary. It was a brief moment of wild freedom before the strict rules of the city closed in. The soft golden light caught the dust as they ran. They left their childhood behind in the quiet sanctuary. Back in the city, the gods were thought to live right under the temples. The priests of a grand marble building claimed a massive, sacred snake lived in the foundations. They left a sweet honey cake near a dark crevice every single month. The snake always ate it. But during a terrifying foreign invasion, the priests made a shocking announcement. They said the snake had refused to eat its monthly offering. The honey cake sat untouched on the flat stone in the dim dawn light. This meant the guardian spirit had abandoned the hill. The news panicked the citizens. It finally convinced them to evacuate the city before the enemy arrived. It is amazing to think that a military retreat was triggered by a pastry. A small, untouched cake in a dark crack of stone saved thousands of lives. The quiet absence of a snake changed the course of history. That enemy invasion eventually burned the sacred hill to the ground. The fire destroyed the most holy relic in the city. It was the sacred olive tree of the patron goddess. The citizens thought all hope was lost in the ashes. But local records tell a story of quiet resilience. When the priests returned the very next day, they checked the ruined stone enclosure. The blackened, charred tree stump had miraculously sprouted a new green shoot. It was a full cubit long, growing straight up from the ash. The soft morning sunlight hit the vibrant green leaves. This tiny plant signaled to the people that their home would survive. It was a symbol of life, pushing through total destruction. The city would rebuild around that single stubborn branch. The fire had taken the wood, but the deep roots remained safe in the earth. When they did rebuild, the results were not what we imagine today. We picture pristine, blindingly white marble temples, shining in the sun. But that image is a historical myth. In antiquity, the grandest temple on the hill was painted in garish, bright colors. The intricate carvings were covered in deep reds, brilliant blues, and shining gold leaf. The builders wanted the figures of horses and riders to stand out clearly from the background. In the bright, clear daylight, the building looked like a vivid painting. The opaque shades of paint hid the natural beauty of the stone. It was loud, colorful, and impossible to ignore. Time and weather eventually washed all that pigment away. The rain bleached the city into the white ruins we know now. But the original vision was a riot of color. The ancient world was much brighter than the faded statues suggest. The engineering beneath that bright paint was just as surprising. The massive columns of the great temple are not solid pieces of stone. They are actually made of stacked drums. The stonemasons perfectly aligned these heavy pieces, using hidden wooden pegs in their centers. To secure the rest of the walls, the builders used iron clamps. But iron rusts and expands over time, which would crack the marble. To prevent this, they carefully encased every iron clamp in poured lead. The soft lead protected the metal from the damp air for centuries. You can imagine the careful work of fitting a massive drum into place. The square wooden peg slid perfectly into its slot. The soft sunlight highlighted the dust in the air. The building has survived earthquakes and explosions because of these hidden joints. The true strength of the temple is locked away, where no one can see it. The top of that massive structure held another hidden marvel. The temple we see today is just an open shell against the sky. But it originally had a massive, incredibly heavy roof. It was constructed from enormous wooden beams that spanned the wide walls. These beams were covered in thousands of overlapping tiles. But these were not ordinary clay tiles. They were carved from pure, gleaming white marble. It was a breathtaking expense. The heavy stone roof served as a major point of architectural pride for the city. You can picture the pristine white tiles gleaming in the bright Mediterranean sun. They locked together perfectly to keep the rain out of the sacred interior. The sheer weight pressing down on the walls must have been immense. The roof was a quiet flex of wealth and power. It capped the highest point in the city with solid stone. That heavy marble roof provided shelter for more than just statues. The Grand Temple was home to a thriving colony of small birds. They were little owls, the sacred bird of the city's patron goddess. They nested high up in the dark rafters and carved ledges. The priests and citizens left them completely alone. If one of these small, wide-eyed birds flew over the army before a battle, the soldiers cheered. It was considered an absolute guarantee of victory. You can imagine the cool blue light of early dusk settling over the hill. A small owl perched quietly on a carved marble column capital. It watched the city below with large, unblinking eyes. The grandest monument in the world was also just a very expensive birdhouse. The wild creatures lived right alongside the divine. They shared the quiet evening breeze as the city finally went to sleep. Our walk through ancient Athens is coming to an end. Wherever you've drifted to, you don't need to come back. There's nothing more to listen for tonight. Sleep well.